My guest today really doesn't need an introduction. I mean, if you've been in voiceover for more than 5 minutes, you've very likely know her because she's literally everywhere. All over social media, speaks at every conference, part of every group. She's an award-winning demo producer. She runs VOPeeps, one of the most respected voiceover training platforms in the industry. And she's also one of my all-time favorite people, period. Welcome to the show, Anne Ganguzza.
Oh, Mark, thank you so much. You know, you're one of my favorite people too, really. And I don't say that because I'm on your podcast. I
was trying to figure out, how do I breach this without coming across like a jerk? Because, you got to be very careful about what you say nowadays. But Anne, when I ran into you in Atlanta, I barely recognized you. You look fantastic.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
You got to tell us what's going on. I want to hear a little bit about this journey that you've been on, because I think that obviously whatever you're doing is working. I think it's pretty inspiring too.
Well, thank you, number one. It has been a health journey, that's for sure. Now that I'm older,
Come on.
my body can't carry the weight that it used to. I mean, I've always had kind of an issue with my weight. And now that I'm older, it just didn't work as well as it used to. And my
metabolism sucks, doesn't it?
Yeah, my doctor kind of said, Anne, you got to do something. And he said something pretty scary to me. He just said stroke level high blood pressure. And that scared me. And I thought, oh my gosh, all right, I got to do something. And so after that, he ordered blood work. And after my blood work, it was clear that I was a wreck. And so that's a pretty big motivator.
That is a wake-up call, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was a big wake-up call. And it's funny because as a cancer survivor, right, you think I've been through that, right? And I literally was like, oh man, the pandemic, well, I worked straight through the pandemic. I worked a whole lot through the pandemic, and just kind of things got out of control. And so over those years, I don't think I looked up from my desk. I was just working. And that didn't do my body any favors. That's for sure. And then my husband, of course, as we all know, Jerry is an amazing cook. Now, Jerry
I can't follow you on Facebook anymore because I can't handle the freaking pictures.
And the thing of it is that Jerry can cook healthy. I mean, there's absolutely no reason. I mean, he cooks anything wonderful. But the problem is that even if he cooks healthy, I want to eat all of it, and I want to eat lots of it, and I want to eat all the things. And so it just became like this whole like contribution of factors, of age, of medication that I was on, and then I got put on. And so I, believe it or not, I've been working on it for about close to a year and maybe a half. And so it hasn't been a short journey, but I think what happens is when you lose a substantial amount of weight, all of a sudden people they look at you and they say, whoa, like what happened? Yeah. And it was like it was yesterday, but in reality, it was about a year, maybe a year and a half. So I worked diligently. I was on a plan, which I now coach because I want to be accountable, number one. I certainly don't want to put that back on. Yep. So now I said, well, why not coach? Because that's the best way to stay accountable to myself and to others, because people are, they're noticing. So now I got to make sure that, I don't go back. But I feel great. And believe it or not, it affects me in every aspect of my business.
Oh, for sure.
The fact that I feel great and that I'm healthier. I mean, it's just because our businesses, our voiceover, our voice, it's such a personal part of who we are. Believe it or not, it affects my performance and it affects my energy levels.
I was going to say energy levels, stamina, all of those things, right?
Everything. And so I couldn't be happier. And I really appreciate you. Thank you for saying that. So
I totally relate to I should coach it to hold me accountable like that.
Right.
That makes so much sense to me, because I've said all along, when you see me posting stuff in the VOpreneur group or posting stuff on social media, videos, podcast episodes, whatever I'm doing, the messages that are in those videos 9 out of 10 times are messages for myself.
Yeah.
From myself, for myself, just to remind myself, but I know that they'll benefit everybody else who's listening as well. So much of the coaching is it's me kicking myself in the butt, the reminder, the constant reminder, the constant accountability. And I just know that anybody listening will benefit as well. So I totally get that side of things. Plus, I mean, come on, you're a fantastic coach. So why wouldn't you coach? Like that just makes sense.
Thank you. I mean, I've certainly got every aspect of the story to share and commiserate with other people who might be going through the same thing. So there's a lot to be said for that. And I will say that when I came out with my I guess my before and after pictures, people were like, whoa. And that was hard. I mean, it's hard when you're really like, I was like, I couldn't even look at them with that. It was painful. Sure. It was painful because I was like, you don't know what happened. I don't know what happened. Like what happened there? And so for me to kind of just come out and just say, look, this is what happened, and here's where I was, and here's how I am today. But of course, those are probably the most effective, I guess.
That's what's relatable.
Effective posts because it's relatable.
We've all got that story. I mean, I remember looking at pictures after Kaylee was born, and some of the early pictures from when she was born, I was horrified because I had put on, I guess I put on baby weight with my wife, except she lost all hers when the baby came out and I didn't. And I remember looking at some of those pictures and thinking like, this is not how I want to remember these memories. And so I started being a lot more conscious of what I was eating and how much I was eating and when I was eating it and all of those sorts of things. He says, well, he's sitting here, with a Dr. Pepper in his hand. But I totally get it. Well, I mean, good for you because you look fantastic.
Well, thank you.
I can totally understand how it, but I mean, I don't buy the whole age thing because I mean, you're what, 45?
Yeah, right. I wish. Actually, you know what? My birthday is coming up in 3 days, and I'm going to be 58, so I'm not shy about that.
Incredible.
So,
well, good for you. It's amazing.
Thanks. Yeah. I feel like it might be my cats that keep me young. My cats and Jerry, of course. So
right on. So let's talk demos. How about
I love demos.
Let's start with, I didn't get to see the Super Bowl because, I didn't get to see the Super Bowl commercials because, Canada, God forbid we get to watch the American commercials here in Canada. But I remember the day after the Super Bowl, there was somewhere in the neighborhood of 57,000 posts on social media about the Poppi commercial and the trend of the Poppi commercial and the read of the Poppi commercial. I'm just curious, based on I don't know if you watched the Super Bowl or if you watch commercials after the fact, what stood out to you? What were the ones that you're like, ooh, I could see that going. I could see this becoming a trend. This is one I want to keep my eye on. This is what I want to talk to my students about.
I think the Poppi commercial. I think the Poppi commercial just envelops everything we've been kind of talking about for the past couple of years, where it's just more authentic. It's more like, hey, this is, marketing 101, right? How do you sell? How do you effectively sell to your clients? And basically it's more of a peer-to-peer kind of testimonial and hey, this is what I've experienced, and so I think it's going to work for you too. That kind of a real authentic sort of a sound is what sells, and I think that's what advertisers are going for, because again, we're a very educated consumer base, and so we know from a mile away when somebody's trying to sell us, basically. And we don't want to be told what to do, basically. So I mean, the Poppi commercial is a great example. I did notice this past year that there were a lot more celebrity voiceovers than voiceover actors this year. But the Poppi commercial was a good one. I mean, the Poppi read. I still call it my authentic read. And it's funny because I'm just like, be engaging, be out there, like talk to someone. Don't read to them or don't announce to them. Just talk to them, because that's what we really that's what we want. That's the connection we want.
It's funny because it seemed so controversial. Keep in mind, I hadn't seen the spot yet. Mm-hmm. And I'm reading all of these different takes and if this is what the world is going to, this is garbage, and we might as well use AI, and there was a lot of real negativity around it. So when I actually watched it, I was like, oh, this doesn't sound so bad.
Yeah.
It sounds like that generation. Yeah, and maybe that's part of it,
it's
right? I mean, that generation is, I hate to say it, but 20 years younger than me now. So maybe that's part of it. But I was like, I didn't think it sounded that bad. I actually enjoyed listening to the spot.
I didn't either because, again, like I work with younger students. It is a part of their demeanor. It's a part of what they sound like. I mean, absolutely. And again, it's a different style too. I mean, in a way, it's a different sound because, I don't know, maybe because you're right. Is it because as coaches and producers, have we aged? Have we aged, and have we, not been listening as much to the youthful audience? But I know that, that sort of a sound, that more younger millennial kind of, this is what the demographic is that, is trying to be reached, right? Products are trying to reach that generation.
I remember doing a coaching session with Everett Oliver once, and he was like, okay, now do it again, but sound like you don't care. Now, he used slightly different language, slightly, more firm language. But, I know that that's kind of the way that some of it has been described. Although I wouldn't say with that particular spot that I felt like they didn't care. I didn't feel that way.
I felt like she was just like, hey,
To me, so one of the hardest directions that I struggle with is when you get the direction that just says, I want you to read this like you're sitting down and talking to your friend, which it's really hard to do when you're in the booth by yourself and, you can put up a picture of somebody or whatever. I genuinely thought that was a really solid representation of sitting down and have a conversation with your friend.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. And I think that when I listened to it, I didn't say, was it detached? I just said, oh, that's very authentic for the person that, you know what I mean? That is delivering it. I mean, I didn't think one way or the other. That's so funny because then it became like a big discussion. And I'm like, I don't, okay, here's the deal. If I'm going to direct someone, right, because I literally you just got me after I directed somebody on a demo, right? I want them to be, and I don't want them to be anything but genuine or authentic. And so if the script is calling for, maybe an older adult or something in a corporate nature, or because this was a corporate, which would be different than maybe how I would direct, depending on the product and or the demographic of, for a commercial demo. But still, no matter what genre I am directing, I want it to be authentic to the copy. I want it to be authentic to the purpose. I think there's so many people that don't really look at the copy and understand what's the purpose and who is the demographic. And that really has a lot to it. And a lot of times, clients will hire the demographic that they're selling to, right? Because then that's that peer-based sort of, hey, I've tried this and you should too. And, it's basically, we're talking to each other in our own peer groups. And to me, it just sounded authentic and genuine. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's great. That's about as natural as you're going to get from that sound, that young sound, really, I thought.
So the question then is, does it translate to, I'm a guy in my mid 40s. I don't want to say late yet.
Man,
I'm a guy in my mid 40s.
I know what you're asking.
And I sound like this, right? Yeah. So is it, how much of it is the read and how much of it is the sound?
Well, again, yeah. So for me, I don't believe in directing a sound. I believe in channeling authenticity and channeling, again, who you are and who you're talking to, and not necessarily the sound. I don't want you to mimic a sound. I want you to actually channel a character.
So it's your version of that style.
Yeah. Your version. I think honestly for you, if or for me, right, if somebody said, can you give me a millennial read? I'm like, no, I can give you Anne's version of a detached read, if that's what you're thinking about. Like, what's the emotion we're going for here and who am I talking to? I can give you that, but I cannot give you a millennial read because I don't believe that there's any one distinguishable characteristic, because you've got younger millennials and you've got elder millennials, and they sound different. They've been through different life experiences and they actually do sound different.
You said something else that I think is really interesting, because this is something that I've thought about when I go into the booth. More often than not, particularly on commercial, we'll get specs that say, 25 to 45, which that in and of itself is such a massive range and, multiple styles and whatever. But, 25 to 45. And then you get the usual. we want it to be authentic and conversational and no announcer and blah, blah, blah. So they're really good at giving you that side of things. And then there's just a script.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're supposed to be telling a story, for me, the auditions that I have the easiest time with is when there's actually something of the story that comes with it. Like it says, you know, it sets a scene, or, you know, like every once in a while you get a script and it's got,
like
you know, this is what's on the, you know, this
Mm-hmm.
is what's happening on the screen. This is what's happening on the screen, or what. So it makes it easier for me to figure out, okay, now I understand, because telling me 25 to 45 conversational guy next door don't sound announcery. Like, what the crap does that actually mean? Right.
Yeah.
And so I really,
well, then you have to read the script and analyze the script and then figure out what is that scene.
And that's where I think, which sometimes you can, a lot of times,
you can't.
You're like, what the heck?
Yeah,
like the script means nothing, right?
Yeah.
And so, or because the script is so general, you could literally take it in 7 different directions. And so it's really helpful when you get a little bit of a description of the spot. And I feel like for casting directors, like if you want us to get closer to the goalpost and out of the gate, including some of that information more frequently, I feel like it would be more helpful. But maybe that's just me, because sometimes that's the hardest part, is looking at a script and being like, I'm not actually really sure what this is saying.
Right. And I deal with that all the time with, you know, with long format narration in corporate, especially. And I'm always saying to my students, okay, so, you know, when you get a commercial audition and you read it and you're like, I have no idea what this is even talking about. There's no product name. There's no company name. And you don't know what it is. And it's some abstract kind of a story. Well, it is up to you as the actor to create the scene in which the words in front of you make sense, right? And when you do that, and I'm not talking just some of the words, I'm talking all of the words, right? And all the way through the script, you have to have the entire story. You can't just have the beginning of the story, because maybe at the end the words don't match the scene that
totally changes in the scene,
the scene that you put out in the beginning. And then what happens is, when you're trying to tell that story with your voice, it doesn't make sense, and it sounds as though you're not connected. So no matter what the story is that you create, right? Because they've not given you a storyboard, they've not given you any descriptive, you know, scenes, but whatever story you create that makes sense and that you can connect to and tell, that's going to be the one that the casting director hears and says, there's an actor. So no matter what we give them, they're going to be able to be directed. And that is where I think that, you know, that's why I think sometimes they don't provide the storyboard, or maybe they don't have the storyboard completed yet, but they have, somebody obviously wrote the copy and they paid somebody to write the copy that had some knowledge of the product and the company and the demographic. And so they knew in their head, and maybe they're just putting it out there so that they can get the artists, the actors' interpretation of it, to see what you come up with it. Because if you can sound like you're telling the story and you sound connected to every single word, and again, it has to be just about every single word. There's a purpose for every single word, whether it's connecting important concepts or ideas, right? There is a purpose and a reason for every single word. And if you run into your studio and just start recording an audition without understanding what the purpose of that is, or what your story is, even if it seems weird and you're like, I don't know what this is about, you have to create a story. And then what will happen is, when you create the story, you're going to tell it like it means something, like it has purpose.
Right. Makes sense.
Yeah.
So what else? I mean, you know, Poppi, that's one that everybody else was talking about. What else are you seeing this year? What's trending in 2024, or what are you keeping your eye on to be aware of? And it could be commercial, or, I mean, you do every genre, you produce every genre.
Commercial and all the,
what should we be aware of?
Commercial and all the geeky narrations. Things, I would say, honestly, I would say we've already done a good job of sounding like robots. There's many things that, you know what I mean? If we go in and we read a script and we're reading it, it ends up sounding like synthetic voices or robots. So for me, the further away you can get with your acting so that you can sound more human, the better off you are. And I believe that every voice actor should be concentrating on upping their skills, their acting skills, so that they can tell that story in a way that is not is not reflective or doesn't sound robotic or read or narrative. Believe it or not, the word narrator, it bothers me a little bit, because when people hear corporate narration or, e-learning narration, they feel like I'm just going to be delivering information. And in reality, that's not what you're supposed to be doing as an actor. You're supposed to be creating a story or telling a story. And even in e-learning, you are delivering a lesson which has an introduction, it has a storyline, or it has, teaching points, and it has a conclusion. And so understanding that is, I think, so important for a voice actor today. And you need to get away from, of course, I think we can all sound detached and poppy if we want. If we just want to read, or sometimes that's even harder to do. But I say try to sound as human as possible, because we have the synthetic voices on our tails, which are sounding better and better and better every day. And so the people that don't have the budget for the human voices are going to go for those voices. And you can do those with your eyes closed. You don't, I think most of us can do those with their eyes closed. I do telephony all the time. That's like, thank you for calling, that
formulaic,
whole, right? So formulaic. And the announcer, I think we've all got the announcer read. If you're
I'm still waiting for that to come back
12,
in. I'm telling you, everything comes back again eventually. I am still waiting.
Yeah. If you're above the age of 12, I think you have the announcer in your head. You know what I mean? You hear the melody, right? And we mimic all the time. And again, it's voice acting. It's not voice mimicking, unless somebody's asking you to mimic a sound. In which case, if they say mimic the Poppi sound, I'm sure most of us could do that.
Could do it, find a way. Yep.
Yeah, they could find a way to do that. I like to say channel, and it's like not channeling a sound, but it's channeling an acting emotion or an actor, versus trying to, just be like a parrot and sound like. I don't think you should try to sound like anything.
I think with e-learning in particular, you've already got a group of people who are suffering through training that they probably don't want to be suffering through.
Yeah.
So the last thing that you want to be doing is boring them even further,
oh, God,
or
I know.
giving them
That's
even
what
more
I
of a
say.
reason to completely disengage. And
that's what
I found that because I do a lot of e-learning work, and I have found that it has really changed over the last few years. And I think maybe COVID was kind of a real shift, because so much more of it had to start happening.
Yeah.
People were doing it at home, and there's not an instructor in the room, smacking them on the knuckles with the ruler to make sure they're still awake or whatever. And so it did get much more conversational, much more engaged. I think even some of the stuff that I saw in the way the scripts were written, they were starting to try to write them to be a little bit more like that.
That makes sense.
And
I mean,
that to me, that's a good thing, because, AI can't do it yet.
Right.
Now, talk to us in 3 weeks. I don't know. The way the technology is going, but
well, that's why I keep saying, be more human. Be the actor, be more human, be that person that can, because when you develop the acting skills, you're going to be able to change direction on a dime. If somebody says, well, can you give it to me like this? Or, hey, I'd like it a little brighter with a little more smile, or maybe, which always means make it a little more commercially. Can you give me a little more energy? That kind of stuff. So being flexible and being able to change and follow direction is really, I think, the best skill that any voice actor can have today, in order to compete. And then honestly, I'm going to say, have both. I mean, me, I've been interviewing AI companies and people for a long time now. And honestly, I'm not that person that's going to fight against the technology. I say, well, as long as we're paid fairly and we have, our voices are protected, I think have two voices. Have your acting voice, which is what we continue to always hone and build our skills upon. And then get yourself, a voice that's protected, a synthetic voice and offer that to your clients, because if somebody's going to get that, right? If they have a certain budget, somebody's going to get that. It might as well be you. And you can do that passively.
I had a conversation with somebody just this past week, and they were talking to me about the whole AI thing. And I said, look, I think there's two different scenarios that I'm paying attention to from a longevity standpoint.
Absolutely.
First is the actor.
Yep.
If you are an actor, like you've really got the ability to be a voice actor. I think that group of people will have longevity, and I think there will be opportunities for them. I think the other group that has longevity is the group that embraces what is happening and finds a way to adapt it for their business, which is exactly what you just said. You know, build a model, own the model, use the model. You know, I've said all along, if a client comes to me at this point, or I go to, you know, I market to somebody and they say, well, we only use AI voices. I want to be able to say, okay, well, look, if you're only using AI voices anyway, here's an option, because I don't feel like I'm taking anything away from anybody at that point. And if they're going to spend the money on it, I would so much rather the money go in my pocket. And so I look at it as I don't know, it's almost like a pension.
Yeah, it's a
right?
passive
Like,
income stream.
It's a passive income stream that down the road, you know, potentially becomes a pension. There's a check that comes in every month from that voice. And so that's definitely something that I've been thinking a lot of. Well, you know, we went there, so let's talk about it. There was a bunch of us that did voices for Vocal ID back in 2021. I think I recorded like 40 hours to get my voice model done, right? And then at VO Atlanta, if you sat in on the AI panel at VO Atlanta, Karin Gilfrey had somebody come up out of the audience and recorded 12 seconds. 12 seconds. And the voice that came out of that 12 seconds was better than the voice that I recorded 2 years ago with 40 hours worth of stuff. It's really scary. It's a little incredible bit how how fast the technology is. And I mean, maybe that's not fast, but to me, like, that's just a couple of years removed, right? Like, I recorded my voice, I think, in December of 21. And so how far it's come in a couple of years, it is pretty crazy. But as good as the voices sound in certain things, there's still a lot of areas where I'm hearing them where I think they sound pretty bad still.
Yeah, absolutely. There's not a lot of nuance, and you know, I deal in nuance with, you know, with long format narration pretty much in right, any e-learning or corporate. There's a lot of nuanced acting for that, because, you know, again, it's not like with a commercial. I'm always telling people, with a commercial, you've got 60 seconds to make a sale, right? There's always a sale. I mean, and you know, companies are formed because they have products and they want to sell those products. And the same thing is true for corporate narration, right? You're talking about a company. A company exists because they have a product or a service or a brand that they want to sell. And if they can sell those things, then ultimately people will buy from them. So even in corporate, where it may be like, oh, here's who we are, this is our mission statement, this is what we're about, here's corporate responsibility, here's, you know, we're sustainable, or we want to be net zero in 2025, whatever that is. That's a concept or a brand that there's brand philosophy that they're selling. If they can sell that, then they're going to sell their products. And so that sale is longer than a minute, right? That corporate narration is anywhere, I think, from a minute to about 4 or 5 minutes. After that, you're probably teaching them how to do it. But 4 to 5 minutes, you're soft selling. And that soft sell is super nuanced. Now, if you try to come, just like you can tell a snake oil salesman from miles away, right? In corporate narration, you can't be a snake oil salesman for 4 minutes because it will drive people crazy. So the message, it takes longer to get there, right? But there's still a sale. And even it may not even be like obvious, but there's always a sale. There's always a sale. And so your acting you have to recognize that. You have to do the analysis. And again, those stories are not written conveniently or nicely. Sometimes they're written abstract. They're written, you know, maybe for a company that didn't hire a copywriter, right? Oh, it's just corporate narration. We're going to talk about the features of this product, and we're going to do that in like 3 minutes. Think explainer videos, or, you know, or longer corporate, you know, videos. And so maybe they'll look at a manual, or they'll, you know, some written marketing material, and then you'll have a script. And so it'll be a sales pitch, but sometimes it won't be. And sometimes it will be like so abstract, you won't even know where the sale is, which makes it even more important for you as the actor to understand the story. And it takes time. I cannot tell you how many people come to me and think that corporate narration is simple. And they're like, but I'm just delivering information. It is not, because you've got to maintain someone's attention for longer than a minute. I can barely watch a video for longer than, you know what I mean? An interesting video.
We got like 3-second attention spans now, courtesy of TikTok and Instagram Reels.
Yeah. So your voice has to engage. And it's funny because when we know what's in it for us, you know, we'll listen, right? Yep. So I'm listening or watching something because there's value to it. There's entertainment value. There's knowledge value. There's, you know, some sort of information that I'm looking for or seeking out. And then I'll listen, but I'm only going to listen if it's interesting to me, right? So your voice, given the words that you've been dealt, right, on the script, has to be the most interesting, engaging voice that can motivate and inspire someone to action. And if you do not understand the story that you're there to tell or the call to action, then you've missed the boat. Then you're just reading the words. That's it.
That's what you hear with these AIs. And one of the things that I've said, and I say this on the topic as a whole, but I also say this as a human being who is encountering this stuff on a day-to-day basis, voiceover aside, I don't trust it. Like as soon as I hear something that has an AI voice, which now maybe I can pick up on the AI voice quicker because I'm a voice actor, but as soon as I hear something that has an AI voice, I'm immediately skeptical. I'm skeptical of the content. I'm skeptical of, is this real? I'm skeptical of, you know, am I about to be, you know, is this a fake ad or a fake product, or is this a spoof on something? Like I get really skeptical and I have a hard time trusting it.
Yeah.
And I wonder, there's a lot of brands that seem to be experimenting. Just today, at the time that we're recording this interview, just before I came on, there's a big thing going on X right now. Because one of the major auto manufacturers, I won't name names at this point, but it sounds like in their latest ad campaign in the UK, they're using an AI voice. It sounds terrible. Like it really sounds terrible. And so there's a part of me that wonders, like, are they just experimenting just to see, or are they going to listen if people start to push back and realize this wasn't a good idea, or it does create a lack of trust? I don't know. I'm curious where it's going to go.
I think there has to be, you know, as with all technology or any technology, because, you know, I worked in technology for quite some time before I got into voiceover, you know, and I tell the story about how back in the day, we were one of the first, where I worked was one of the first institutions to implement voice over IP. And in the beginning, the technology sucked. It was, you know, the calls would drop, there was echo, the quality just wasn't there. And people said, oh my God, I hate this. It'll never last. And, you know, fast forward 15 years later, we're all using voice over IP, whether we even know it or not, right? We're using, who installs like a POTS line anymore? And if you know what a POTS line is, bonus points for you. Because I used to work with a phone company all the time. And that's the plain old telephone service, by the way. So, you know, nobody gets POTS lines, right? Nobody gets POTS lines installed anymore, but we all do our calls over the internet and all over, you know, the network. And so 15 years it took. So I think it's a matter of companies trying it, getting it out there, and then people become used to it, and then it becomes normal. And then ultimately we're like, okay, I know it's AI. And so if I know it's AI, then I'm okay with it. Like for right now, I'm okay that Alexa is Alexa. And when I ask Alexa for information, I know she's not real. I know that she's delivering, you know, with her voice. I know what she's just delivering information to me. And for me, I'm okay with it because it's information I have asked for and it is interesting to me. Right. So I think what advertisers are doing is they're playing around to see like what, you know, what the consumer is going to tolerate. Right. The way I think about it when I talk about e-learning and why, you know, there are two different types of teachers. There's your, and I say high school, and I don't want to, maybe I don't want to stereotype it, but when I was in high school, I had two teachers that were ultimately, they changed the course of my life. They motivated me. They inspired me. One was my music teacher and the other was my English teacher. And they had two totally different styles. But when it came down to it, when they spoke to me, they cared, right? They cared about me, and they were excited about the information they were delivering, and they got me excited about it. And so I resonated with that. And then when I went to college, I had multiple instructors who basically, they were tenured. They didn't really care. Their job was secure. I'm not saying they don't really care about teaching anymore, but they've been doing it for so long and they didn't have to worry about their job being threatened. And so they were like, I don't care if you show up to class. Here's the material. You pass, you fail, you fail. I could really care. And so think of that as the voice that's delivering information to you, that cares for you, that's warm, that's engaging, that's the actor, versus the voice that is simply reading and delivering information in words to you, which is going to be that college professor. So depending on, right, the consumer, right, or the buyer, right, what works, right? What works for the sale? What works for the lesson? What works for the education? And we all know after many, many years of people doing online learning and most of the narrators sounding like, welcome to module 1 without even synthetic voices, right?
Yep.
We already know, like, many years of history that say, oh, that's not engaging, that sucks. But some companies will buy that voice because they don't care. You just need to, it doesn't matter to us. You just need
they just got to check a box. Did my staff sit and listen to this training? Yes or no?
Exactly.
Did they absorb it? I don't care. I just need to check the box of whether or not they listen to it.
That's your buyer. So depending on your buyer and whether they care, or, you know, that the intention of that voice is, you know, is engaging or not, will, and their budget, it's all going to depend. And so that's why I think it's so very important that we as actors have both options for our clients, AI and human, because I think they're both necessary depending on the product, depending on the purpose, depending on who they're reaching out to and how much engagement they need, right? If you're a company and you just got to train somebody on bloodborne pathogens, you know, in the machine shop so that people, you know, do they care if you're engaged as an employee? You know, maybe they don't, maybe they do. I think it just, everybody's different. And so I think we as providers, we are service providers, right? We provide a service, we provide a product. We need to be eyes open and we need to be ready to provide that if we want to be successful, if we want to stay in business. Otherwise, you know, maybe voiceover is not something we should be doing.
So are you willing to share if there are places where you're doing AI or are there are a lot of different places where we can go and get an AI voice, but not all of those are created equal. And some of them, you got to be very careful about, right? You come back to Nava's
and I'm still
consent,
researching.
control, compensation, et cetera, right? You know, I think some of us, I will say myself, I was hoping that that's what I was going to find with Focal ID. And then obviously that shifted and hey, that's, you know, the market and life and business and
the
whatever.
market, you know, that's what's so good. So here, I love that example because, and Rupal was always, oh, everybody's like, Rupal is awesome. And she is awesome. She did an amazing thing, right? I mean, she was giving voice to people who didn't have a voice. And as a matter of fact, I now know that she's going back to doing that because I feel like that's where it really made a difference for her. It's hard to sell voices. It is hard, right? And that was the prime example of, you know, that technology and other companies trying to sell voices, right? To, you know, oh, get your own voice, pay us 10 grand and we'll develop a voice for you that can be the sonic brand of your company. And there are people who, you know, it became cost prohibitive for us, for voice actors, right? So we weren't a good market for those companies to say, hey, do you want to buy a voice? So they turned to the corporate world, and the corporate world has lots of money, typically budgets, right? But do they care, right? That is their CEO has a voice, or is it maybe a hybrid voice that just sounds good? So that market is shifting and evolving. And I think that companies that originally thought there was a lot of money in synthetic voices and selling them have now realized that maybe there isn't, because the technology evolved so quickly and the voices got pretty darn good. And how important was it that there was a specific sound, unless you were a celebrity, right? Or a CEO that really wanted your own voice. How important is that? And I think for us, if we have the way it'll work for us is that if we have clients that we're going to use AI already, which you mentioned, right? Why not have our own voice as an offering? And because if we can get on that train now, right? We have some say in the matter. We have some like ability to negotiate with people. If we don't get on that train, then everybody's going to pick, voices off the roster, which could be hybrid voices, which don't have to be anything special. But for me, hey, look, I want to offer my voice to my existing client if you want that, because they've developed a ton of modules already, right? Or I've done a bunch of work already for them.
Yep.
And it makes sense for them to buy my voice. Well, we need to be our own business people. We need to be entrepreneurs, just like we're supposed to be, right? And we need to get on the ground floor, make sure our voices are protected, right? Nava's done great work for that. Rob Paglia, he's amazing. He's done a lot of work for me. I have about 5 voices, believe it or not. And I've tested them, and I'm still evolving. I pretty much make sure that my voice is protected. I go and I develop it. I see if I like it. And then I might make that voice available to my client. And so I'm still working on it, and I'm not going to be left behind. That's for darn sure.
I genuinely think with how fast the technology is moving, I don't think, and maybe I'll be proven wrong in this, but I don't think that we're more than a year or two away from having the ability to build an AI voice that we literally host. Like, not having to go to a third party and 11 labs or whatever. Like, the technology is going to be there that we're going to be able to build this thing, have a server, whatever. I would not be surprised if we got there.
If there's money in it.
Yeah.
If there's money in it, right? If somebody can profit off of it, yes, I believe that.
Well, but then you own the voice, right? Because you have control of the voice.
But until that happens.
Until that happens,
and
where do you go? Yeah.
Yeah, and that actually, that's absolutely a possibility. It really depends on, what happens. I think here's the good thing about bad things happening, like bad actors, is that it helps to get regulation out there quicker. And I think that needs to be an established kind of a thing where there is, it's a wonderful thing that Nava is fighting so hard, and that there was a strike, believe it or not. It sounds like horrible things, right? And that Bev's standing, right? Her voice got stolen. It may sound like bad things, but in reality, it's good that those things happen, because that's helping to push regulation, getting, procured faster, and that is going to protect all of us.
When I talked to Tim and Karin, I had them on the show recently, and one of the things that we talked about was the fact that the fact that it is an election year, that in and of itself will probably drive legislation faster because of the fear of how the technology, and not just the voice technology, the image technology, the video technology, all of it, how AI can be used to potentially sway an election, or one way or another. And so there's definitely a greater sense of urgency. So I'm curious, let's put the voice side of AI aside for a minute. You're someone who I've always considered to be very much on the leading edge of technology. You're always looking around the corner at what's new, what else is going on. Are you using any kind of AI tools in your business in any other way outside of synthetic voice? I'm curious.
Oh gosh, yes. I would be silly if I wasn't.
have all the toys. You have Jarvis. You have a Jarvis, don't you? Tell the truth. You've got your Iron Man Jarvis in your house.
I have all the toys. Why wouldn't we? That's the thing. If you're not, right? If you're not taking advantage of these tools to help you run your business more efficiently and more effectively, there are lots of, you may think that AI is evil in many ways. And yes, it can be when you're talking about deep fakes, when you're talking about bad actors and people stealing your voice. But when you talk about the actual good things that it can do to help you become more efficient, and so that you as a human being can come at your tasks at a higher elevation, at a higher creativity level, like, why do those tedious things, right? Like data collection, or, that kind of a thing. Like, I feel like you're spinning your wheels. Why do more work than you have to when you've got a tool there that can help you? And there's so many things that AI can do to help you right now. And if you're not utilizing it, everybody else is. So you might get left behind again. Yes,
so valuable to me as a brainstorming partner.
Absolutely.
Like, honestly,
I ask it questions all the time.
It's become a brainstorming partner for me. I've recently started creating some videos that I'm using as part of a marketing strategy.
Yeah.
And ChatGPT has been helping me to write scripts for those videos because I'm not a script writer. I can't do that. Or this podcast, I have a plugin, an AI plugin for Adobe Premiere that literally saves me at minimum an hour per episode in editing time. Because
I don't transcribe anymore.
Yeah, I click a button and it cuts up all the video for me in like 20 seconds versus me spending an hour or two doing it. And so I think
Riverside. You're on Riverside.
Riverside has got tons
all
of
over
stuff.
the place.
Yes,
I use it to generate shorts. I use it to do my transcriptions. I use it, and I use a couple of different programs. I use the professional version of ChatGPT, which is eons better than the free version, and well worth. I think I pay $20 a month. I can't quite remember, but it's well worth it.
You just talked me into it because I actually asked that question in a group the other day. How much of a difference there was between the output?
Huge. It's huge. It's huge. And the thing about it is that, number one, it gives you more current information, and you can tell it that you want all original content. When you actually feed it instructions on what you're looking for, when it outputs data, you can say that I'm looking for original content. So it's not you're not worried about like copyright infringement and that sort of thing. And so it's well worth it. I also have another tool that I invested in prior to ChatGPT, which is called Copy AI. I also invest in Podium for my, besides Riverside, Podium for my podcasts, which actually did the best job, and I researched a lot of them. When you feed it an MP3, it can generate the chapter notes and the summaries and the takeaways, and it does a really good job. So
I'm writing that one down.
I by the way, I am a affiliate for Podium, so I can save you some money. I really like that one. But Riverside does a decent transcription job. But
yeah, Riverside has been really good for transcribing. So I've actually gotten to using Riverside as well. I'll edit videos in Premiere, but then upload them back into Riverside because I like the captioning. Like I like the style, the visual style of the captioning in Riverside better than what I can do in Premiere. And I think there's always going to be a segment of people who are standing on their, I don't even know if you would call it moral ground. I mean, that's probably how they feel about it. I don't want AI to replace my job, so I wouldn't allow AI to replace somebody else's job or whatever. But I'm looking at it like I don't have $50 an hour to hire an editor to do my podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I'm not taking a job away from somebody because I wasn't hiring somebody else to do it anyway. But if I can find a tool that gives me a couple hours of my life back every week, give me all the tools.
Because you got to remain competitive too. I mean, there are other businesses using that for their marketing, for their email. And, you put out a marketing course, right, Mark? So, I would assume that part of that marketing course will now maybe say, here's how to use AI to help you with your marketing. Because if you don't do it, I mean, other people are. And it's maintaining a sense of competitiveness with your business and with basically not just voice actors and in the voiceover industry, but in business in general, because at some point everybody's going to be using it. And so then we got to level the playing field. It just becomes like, well, everybody else has got these tools at their disposal and we need to make sure we're using them efficiently. And right now, while maybe most people aren't, I mean, it might help us get a leg up. Hey, I'm just saying, we are business people, right?
It is not.
We are business people.
Literally, it is not humanly possible for me to do all of the things that I do on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis without some of these tools. And some of these tools have helped me to be able to do even more.
Yeah. Well,
just because of how much time it gets me back, right?
I still hire a team of people because what it's done is it's elevated all of us, right? So that we can perform functions at a higher level than having to worry about tedious things, right? Tedious, repetitive things that computers, it's just like, think about it back in the, when computers were first developed, I mean, and processors were developed. I mean, they helped to process instructions how much faster than the human brain could do it. And so literally it's the same kind of technology. It really is. It's just helping us to do our jobs more efficient and faster. So therefore our brains can be free to do higher, elevated, more creative things. And that's the positive spin that I like to think on, technology. I don't hate on technology. I never have. I've always had to be on the bleeding edge of it anyways, but I like, why not? Why wouldn't we use it? to help
I think
ourselves.
AI is particularly interesting because some of the very people who are so opposed are also using it every day, but not realizing it because they don't think about
they don't know
Siri
it.
is AI,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Alexa
Google is AI. Yeah.
Apollo.io, which voice actors are raving about Apollo.io. Guess what? AI.
Oh yeah.
Canva, built in AI. Like
oh my gosh, yes.
It's everywhere. So you're using it. Most of you are using it, and maybe you don't even realize it yet. But it's certainly it's certainly made a big difference in my level of productivity because it's allowed me to do more things. It's allowed me to do some things better. It's allowed me to do some things more efficiently. So, okay, let's go back to demos, because I got a question that I really wanted to ask you about demos. And I know you just came out of a demo session as well, but I'm curious to know, what are 3 things that a voice actor can do that just make you happy because they can just, when they do these things, it's going to crush the demo session? And 3 things that voice actors are doing in demo sessions that make you want to just reach through Source Connect and grab them by the ear. And
3 things. Okay. So, one of the most important things is to, first of all, have fun, to relax enough to have fun, because when you can do that, more of your authentic self can come out. That makes me happy and I understand like the adrenaline, and when people are, if they're newer to the industry, or they're, I've been doing the majority of my demos through Source Connector IPDTL, similar to how people have been coaching with me. So they're already familiar with the platform, so they don't have to worry about the technological part of that.
Sure.
And I also have an engineer on board with me who, basically is there to record and then assemble hero takes for us. And so they don't have to worry about anything technical. And so I want them to just be free to be themselves, because again, it sounds so cliche, but bring yourself to the party is what a lot of coaches say and what people have been saying for years. And it's still very, very important that you bring yourself to the party, because I don't want you to sound like anybody. I don't want you to sound any way in particular. I don't want you to mimic anything. I want you to just be yourself. And when you're yourself, what that does is it allows you to have that extra layer that has a point of view, an emotion to it, a nuance to it that makes you stand out. And that makes me super happy. So relax, have fun, allow the authentic you to come out. And is that 3 or is that 2?
I don't know. Relax, have fun, and allow the authentic you. I thought that always grouped together under one category, but I mean, it could technically be 3.
During a demo session. Well, okay, be prepared for the demo session.
What does that look like? What does that mean?
So being prepared means that, first of all, I'm not going to produce a demo if you're not ready. Sure. And so, I mean, and a lot of that is, yes, I care about you. I'm an educator. I've said this for many, many years. I've been an educator for over 35 years now. And so for me, it's about again, it's about you. It's not about the way you sound. It's about being able to bring the story to life, being the actor. And I want to showcase your acting in the demo rather than a particular sound. And so if you cannot get past reading, right, the material, or trying to sound like you think it's supposed to sound, you're not ready for a demo. You just aren't. You're just not ready for it. And there are some people who don't know what they don't know and will say, but I don't hear when I listen to spots out there, when I listen to commercials, or I listen to, YouTube videos, it sounds like this. And that's not what I want to hear. Right. If that's your argument to me, you're not ready.
Yep.
So being ready means that you have a developed enough ear to understand when you yourself are mimicking a sound rather than being invested in the story. And it takes a lot of mental focus to get yourself out of the listening to yourself and into a scene and into a story. So being prepared for the demo is paramount. It's paramount. Yep. And understanding, I would say the third thing, honestly, it goes kind of hand in hand with that, is understanding that there's an investment to be made. So many people come into this being sold a dream, or being sold that, you too can work from home and do voiceover, or just the assumption that you could do a job because people have told you have a great voice and, you can read well. Just because you're a good cold reader does not mean you're a voice actor at all. And cold voice acting or cold reading skills are helpful. They're helpful in navigating a script, but they aren't not necessarily the be all end all to being an actor. I mean, most actors spend their lives, honing their craft. And so, yeah, I think you have to understand what it means to be ready for that demo. And then you have to understand what it means to invest. And that means investing money. And I think we were talking briefly about this before I got on the interview with you, but it's basically, you have to make an investment, a financial investment in your business. And voiceover is still one of the few that you don't have to spend tens of thousands of dollars in, like a storefront, in inventory, in investing in legal, documents and that sort of thing. This is something you could still spend a few $1,000s with and get a good start. And so, but just because it's easier than some other businesses doesn't mean that you don't make any investment. And it doesn't mean that you shouldn't be prepared to, and you shouldn't be angry at making an investment, or just stomp your feet and say, well, I can't afford that, so let me just go get a demo and then try it. Because that ultimately, it's
a good way to lose money.
Yeah. And it's ultimately the people who have longevity. I mean, I think you would agree, because you've been in this business for, I think you got to hit 8 to 10 years. And then you're like, okay, you've
of how long.
Right. And I've been longer than that, but you know what I mean? If you can survive past that and you're still doing voiceover, then you've made it, really. Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things, if you try it for a year and oh, damn, I'm not getting the work. And why am I not getting the work? And stomping your feet and going, I don't get it. Well, you got to put the time in. It's just, and you got to put the investment in. So I think being open to putting investment in and not being angry about it. And I'm not talking about, that $5,000 demo. Right. That's not what I'm talking about.
No, let's avoid those. So what are the 3 things that in a demo session, that make you want to reach through Source Connect and give somebody a shave?
When people can't get past their nerves, or can't get past their nerves and give me themselves. That is number 1. It's hard. Sometimes it's very hard when you're directing, because you have to try multiple paths to get somebody past their nervousness. Yep. And sometimes, on any given day, it is, it can be more difficult than others. I mean, it could just be, we all have good days and we have bad days. And sometimes when it's a bad day, maybe it's not the day to do your demo. Yep. And it's absolutely, I think if you've got a cold and you want to push through it, no, that'll make me want to choke
not a good idea.
Don't do that. And if you're tired, or if there's anything that could be holding you back, mentally or physically, from giving me your best performance, that would be something that I would say, no, you tell me that.
Yeah. Don't try to fake it.
Yeah. Don't try to fake it. Don't try to be brave or be a hero, because this is your demo, and this is a marketing piece. And this is the other thing too, is that understanding that your demo session, it is for the purpose of creating a demo. And for me, I want to create a demo that gets you work. And so in order to do that, it is about showcasing your acting skills and in your acting range. And it's not necessarily about achieving a particular sound. And so I will take whatever time that is necessary in order to do that, in order to create that sound. And there will be sometimes when I may make you, do 5 or 6 or 7 takes. And as a matter of fact, my engineer will vouch for me that on any given commercial session that he does, sometimes he's doing 40 to 50 takes to get what that director wants. So understand during a demo session that if I'm asking you to do an ABC read, and I might go back and take maybe a sentence from here and a sentence from there, and some people might call that Frankensteining. For me, I'm putting together a marketing piece for you, and I want to make sure that marketing piece represents you in your full acting capacity. Sometimes I might have to do that. And sometimes it's not unreasonable to think that anyone in a live directed session is not doing 20, 30, 40 takes.
Been there, done
under
that.
normal circumstances. Under
Yep.
normal, right? Because really depends on who's directing you and what they want to hear at that any given time.
The more people that are in the room when I do a directed session, the longer I expect that I am going to be there, and the more takes that I am going to have to deliver. Now they're going to come back and use one of the first 5, but not before they make you record 100.
Exactly. And that's the thing. They want the options. And the same thing with any good director. I want the options because, you know, in the end, we're putting music, we're putting sound effects. And again, it is a marketing piece. And I am going to showcase your acting abilities to their top, to the absolute best that you can be. And then everything else also contributes to it. It's the story that you tell. It's the story that the demo tells, right? And music and sound effects are part of that. So really it is a creative process. So understanding that there, you know, you're might have to do multiple takes, and then don't get frustrated at yourself and don't ever apologize. That will always make me want to strangle you.
It doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It just means we're looking for the sweet spot. That's
exactly. That's it.
That was one of the lessons that I had to learn. I was very self-conscious the first few directed sessions.
Well, you're Canadian, so you probably always said you were sorry.
Well, you feel like that's true too, but you feel like when you're going in on a directed session, for whatever reason, there's an expectation in my mind that, you know, I'm the professional. This is what I do for a living. I should be able to come in and nail this on the first take. And so, you know, when they started asking for extra takes, the more takes they asked for, the worse I felt about my ability to deliver.
And it started freaking out.
It starts freaking out. And then I come to find out later, no, they might ask you for 100. I talked to my agent, they're like, they only asked you for 6. And I was like, oh yeah, like I'm so sorry. And she's like, 6? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
They could have asked you for 40. I'm like, oh, okay.
I love that you just back that up because there's so many people that let it freak them out. And I always try to warn them when they get on the session. I said, look, I'm going to be asking you for multiple takes. Don't let it freak you out or let it ruin your self-confidence or because then the performance just goes downhill, right?
Yeah, the first couple directed sessions I did, it wrecked me. It wrecked me in the beginning because I didn't know. But
understand. And they're like, but you're Frankensteining. I'm like, no, I am actually not Frankensteining. I want lots to work with.
I'm putting together the best spot.
Yeah. And that's what it is. Now, if I were paying you, right, and I were a client that were paying you for a read and I had you do multiple reads or whatnot, that's a different story. I mean, again, I still think it's the same thing. Like they want lots to choose from. But as a demo producer, I want to be able to create the best marketing piece for you and to showcase you in the very best light. So, you know, I might change a script and people will get upset. Like if I change a script, I'm like, but you're stumbling over a word and that's silly. I'm not going to have you try to say a word that
doesn't work,
makes you stumble. I mean, it's your demo. If I were paying you, you know, to go by the script, you know, and I wrote the script for the product, then that's a different story. Then practice it until you get it right. But this is your demo and I'm not going to make you do anything or say anything that does not feel connected to me and does not feel like that it represents your best acting abilities. So good question.
I'm on board with that. All right. Tell us about the podcast.
The podcast, man, I'll tell you, I love my podcast, the VO Boss podcast, labor of love, as you know. And I wish I could say I'm making money off it. You know, it's
I spend a lot of money on it, but
I do. I spend a lot of money on it, but it is a passion project. But one thing I just decided to do, believe it or not, and this is not going to happen until the end of the podcast, is I thought, well, I've been doing my podcast for over 7 years now. And not once, I do have some sponsors, right? And I always label the sponsors at the end. I'm like, hey, I don't even do like pre-roll or mid-roll ads. But at the end, I'll do my sponsors. And I thought, you know what? I need to advertise my own services. Like I should be advertising coaching or demo production or the VO Boss Blast. Yep. So now I'm asking people to give me an audio testimonial about maybe the demo process or coaching or, you know, their experience with Boss Blast, or even I will actually do a couple of end segments that talk about the Boss Blast to try and sell it. So I'm going to do my own advertising. And I figure anybody that listens to the very end of the VO Boss, they always get like an Easter egg at the end too, because sometimes I'll do bloopers.
Yep.
Then I know that they're loyal people and that they've stayed to the end of the podcast and they're probably going to listen all the way through. And so there you go. I won't make you suffer in the beginning yet, anyways, through an ad. But I do love my VO Boss podcast. Very proud of it. And I literally, it's a well-oiled machine at this point. I hire probably 8 people, even though I use AI. I still hire people to, you know, help me put it out in social media, to, you know, generate the transcripts, to put stuff up on the website, to, you know, upload it in Libsyn. And so I still have a team of people that work for me. They just do things quicker and smarter. And now I can have them do more things.
People don't realize how much goes in behind the scenes. I've had people come to me and say, I want to start a podcast. Here's my idea. And I'm like, look, I love it. I think it's a great idea. Now let me just give you a little bit of a reality check before. And I'm not saying don't, I'm just saying, understand this is what goes into. I mean, I was clueless when I started. I didn't know that it was going to be as much work as it was. And then I just keep adding things to make it even more work because, you know, I don't know, glutton for punishment or
and you have such a wonderful, you have such a wonderful podcast. Seriously. I listen to your podcast. Like, I don't have time to listen to many. You're about one of the only other ones out there that I do listen to.
Well, let me tell you, I got a great episode coming up here pretty soon with this demo producer called Anne Ganguzza. And that's it. You might want to listen, give that one a listen because there's a lot of good stuff in there.
And I've got one coming up with Marc Scott, and I don't remember when we're interviewing, but it's coming up soon. At some point.
There you go. So, well, Anne, thank you for coming on, for sharing your wisdom with us and your insights. Some really good insights into where the world is going. And you know, I just don't think that AI gives me, I get a little bit nervous about certain aspects of it, but I also think that if we use it in the right way, I think there's going to be some really cool opportunities that are going to come from it that maybe we can't see.
Oh, I agree.
Yet.
I'm hopeful and positive. Yeah. I have to be. Otherwise, I'd cry. And like, who wants to do that?
Exactly. And that's just a crappy alternative. So,
right? Let's just be hopeful about
it. Ignorance is bliss. Let's just hope for the best, and the robots won't kill us. And
that's right. Yeah. We'll just, just utilize it, and we deal with it when it happens, and be positive about it. Because goodness gracious, if we look, I've always been a positive thinker, right? So I'm manifesting good things for our careers and for our podcasts and for our voice actors. And that's it. Putting it
People make fun of me because I use please and thank you in my prompts with ChatGPT, but I am literally future-proofing my life. Like when ChatGPT reaches generative AI state and starts to take over the world, I want it to remember that I was being polite.
Nice. You were being nice. Yes, you're on the good side. You're on the good side. I love that.
All right, Anne. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. We'll make sure to put into the show notes the podcast, VO Peeps, the links for the demo production, everything that you're doing. I sincerely mean it when I say you're one of my favorite people. You were one of my very first mentors. You don't even probably realize it, but you were one of the very first people that I found on social media when I was moving into full time.
We go way back, don't we?
You were one of my very first digital mentors, and I've just had the good privilege and blessing to build a relationship with you over the years and call you friend now. And I love that. So
me too.
Thank you for that too.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. It was a pleasure being on the podcast.
We'll do it again sometime.
Yes.
All right. Thanks, Anne.